Peace be with you. Dear friends, welcome to Living Flame Daily Gospel Reflections. Gospel Reflections for the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter the Apostle. Dear friends, St. Peter is the head of the church. Early Roman Christians celebrated on this day a feast in honor of the departed loved ones, including their predecessor in the faith, Peter and Paul. In the 4th century, when the feast of these two saints was moved to June 29th, the emphasis of this day shifted to celebrating Peter and his successors as the bishops of Rome and expressing gratitude for their service. The cathedra is literally the seat of the bishop. Pope Benedict XVI said on this day in 2006, it is the symbol of his authority and particularly of his magisterium. In other words, of the evangelical teaching that he, as successor to the apostles, is called to protect and transmit to the Christian community. To celebrate the chair of Peter means then giving it a strong spiritual significance and recognizing therein a privileged sign of the love of God. Today's gospel passage for our reflection is Matthew chapter 16 verses 13 to 19. So when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" Jesus called himself the Son of God, for he was really and truly a man born of a woman. He was also called the Son of God, for he was God's Son. If we refer to Luke chapter 1 verse 35, it says, "And the angel answered and said to her, The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest will overshadow you. Therefore, the Holy One who is born will be called the Son of God." By referring to himself as the Son of Man, he also showed himself to be humble. He asked what people thought about him. He didn't ask what the scribes and Pharisees thought, because he knew they were prejudiced against him, that they said he was a deceiver and in league with Satan. Jesus didn't ask this question because he didn't know what men think or because he wanted to hear his own praises. He asked it to make his disciples consider the success of their preaching by showing that he was interested in its effect. The common people conversed more easily with the disciples than they did with their master. He could find out from them what they were saying. Jesus did not clearly state who he was, but left them to infer it from his works. If you refer to John chapter 10 verse 24 to 25, we read, "Then the Jews surrounded him and said to him, 'How long do you keep us in doubt? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly.'" Now he wanted to know what inferences they drew from his miracles and the miracles which the apostles did in his name. Well, the disciples said, "Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." Some said that Jesus was John the Baptist, returned from the dead. That was the opinion of Herod's court, and that is what Herod himself believed. Some believed that he was the prophet Elijah. The prevailing notion among the Jews was that Elijah would reappear before the Messiah came. They believed that Jesus fulfilled Malachi's prophecy. Malachi wrote, "Look, I am sending you, the prophet Elijah, before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives." John the Baptist was the forerunner of Christ, and he was like the prophet Elijah in his dress and manner. There were others who thought he was the prophet Jeremiah, perhaps because of the tears he shed. They believed that he was the one who would be raised from among the people according to Deuteronomy, one like Moses, who wrote, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your fellow Israelites, and you must listen to that prophet." Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15. There were even some who supposed that he was one of the other prophets, for they believed that when the Messiah appeared, that the prophets would rise again. He said to them then, "But who do you say that I am?" A direct question to the disciples. He asked them this question because even though they were his disciples and they believed in him, that is not enough. They must confess him. Both are necessary, therefore, he doesn't say who believe you or believes you, but whom you say that I am. They had been with him a long time. They had heard his words and seen his miracles. They would be the ones to preach the gospel to the Jews and the Gentiles. So he asks them, "Who do you say that I am?" They should know him better than anyone else and should be to the point that they can make a confession of their faith and give a reason for the hope that is within them. Well, Simon Peter comes forward and answers, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Peter declared that Jesus was not one of many, but that he was one set apart from all others. He said, "You are the Christ," which is the Greek title for the Messiah, for whom the Jews had been waiting. Son of the living God is a new title. Peter not only declared that Jesus was the Messiah, he identified the Messiah as the Son of God. Though the disciples had heard the Father call Jesus his beloved Son, and he heard Jesus addressed God as his Father on numerous occasions, this confession went way beyond that to express the understanding of their hearts. That is why Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." Therefore, dear friends, as we celebrate the feast day of the chair of St. Peter the Apostle, we are called to believe that Jesus is the Son of God and Peter is the rock on which Jesus built his church. So we have a direct connection through Peter to Jesus, and it is the representative of Peter in Rome, Pope Francis. It is our obedience to this Pope that directly refers our obedience to the Son of God through Peter. God bless you.